What's up? What's up? Welcome to You Down with IDP. This is Josh Hudson filling in because I'm the last man standing, apparently.
Exactly.
Joe, unfortunately, has a work thing that he's dealing with tonight. Roxanne is dealing with a flat tire that she got on her way home from work. So shout out to both of them for saying, Josh, you got this.
Yeah,
so that's me. I'm filling in tonight and, kicking it over to the smart people with IDP, Mr. Jorge Edwards, Nate Marcum from Fantasy and Frames, who we happen to do this show with. Gentlemen, how we doing this Thursday night?
Look at that.
I know. Modesty on both sides.
We're so pleasant. We'll just talk over each other the entire time. Josh won't have a clue what's going on.
Exactly. And then, of course, backstage, we're ripping each other to shreds. So it's exactly how it should be.
It's what we do, It's part of being part of the Club Fantasy family. Because we like to have fun around these parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially when we do IDP After Dark. To answer your question, doing great, man. Just this is going to be a really fun week for fantasy football, I feel. We're 2 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs. Everybody's trying to get their matchup set, get their lineup set, and really good IDP options this week. Can't wait to talk to you about.
Good, because I'm going to need some help in a couple of the IDP leagues that I'm in. So it's a good thing that we're starting off with injury news and notes. So I want to give a shout out to one of you two for filling in these notes. I'm not 100% sure.
That's this guy right there.
Nate, thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. All right. I'm gonna read down through one of each of these, and I'll let you guys just kind of chime in. I know we've been off here for a couple weeks now, so I'm sure some of these maybe are a little, maybe a week or so late. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, Von Miller, pass rusher for the Buffalo Bills, out with a meniscus injury. I saw earlier today that he was recently placed on IR heading into tonight's game, so he's going to be out this week and then 3 more. Obviously, this is a huge impact, but from what I know and my boy Greg Rousseau, this is going to be good for him. Yes?
Yes, that's exactly who's probably going to be main beneficiary. Got in full practice both yesterday and today, yesterday and Tuesday. So real positive news for Rousseau and Epinesa as well.
And it's like we've been saying since the beginning of the season. Everybody for the Bills who attended Von Miller's pass rushing academy this summer has been lights out. You saw it since week 1. And so I don't think you're going to see any drop off. Which you might even see, Nate, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is that, one of the things that's pretty well known about the Bills defensive line is that they have so many quality players that constantly rotate in and out. So trying to get consistency for IDP purposes in the past has been almost impossible to do. You literally have to throw darts blindfolded to see if you hit on the right one. Not so this year. These guys are producing. They're staying on the field. No Von Miller to rotate. This gives them extra opportunity, especially tonight,
All right. Next big injury here, and this hurts me as an Eagles fan. CJ Gardner-Johnson is out with a lacerated kidney. Now, I will say, Blankenship, I'm blanking on his first name.
Reed
Blankenship. There you go. 2 plays after he comes in, interception. So it's almost like CJ Gardner-Johnson didn't miss a beat, honestly. But obviously, this impacts the Eagles secondary quite a bit, right, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, CJ Gardner-Johnson has been dynamic. And in a lot of IDP leagues, it's even a double kick because if you play in a cornerback eligible league, that is where he was eligible also. So it was like a cheat code, if you want to call him that. And I lost him. So that's the misery coming out in the sense of humor and happiness, which is the opposite of what I'm feeling on the inside. But no one wants to see that. They want to see exuberant, happy Nate, not miserable, sad panda Nate.
Speaking of the Eagles, I want to bring up this comment only because I know Faith is a huge fan of this gentleman, but there was recently some news coming out on him. So I want to get your guys' opinion, especially with the recent additions that the Eagles have made at the defensive tackle position. She's a little sad about her boy Jordan Davis, but Jordan Davis's practice window from IR just opened up this week. What do we see with Jordan Davis coming back based on the snaps that he was playing and the recent additions of Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, 2 guys they brought in specifically to stuff the run? Nate.
So the one thing about Jordan Davis that was a concern for me going in was his ability to stay on the field, not get gassed and winded too easily and too early. And that's what we saw. So I hope he stayed in, as much game shape as he could stay in coming back from the IR. I think that the best thing he could have is his rotation with Hargrave, with Fletcher Cox, with Ndamukong Suh, with, every person. They have the best defensive line rotation of any team in the NFL. And I say that pretty easily, if you ask me.
They're the 2021 Buffalo Bills, defensive line wise, which is not great for fantasy, except, every once in a while. But you bring in Sue, you bring in Linval Joseph, you're clearly seeing those as depth pieces. Davis should get his legs under him sooner rather than later. But you know what this means? This means teams are going to be able to run easily over Philadelphia like they've been doing since the Washington game. Mm-hmm. So this is big news for real football. IDP, it's more of news actually if you're a running back manager for somebody going against Philadelphia that week.
All right, I like it. All right, next big injury, Darnell Savage. All I see is injury here, so somebody fill me in on what specifically that injury is.
It's Jorge. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so he's a fellow Terrapin of mine. He's a turtle, and apparently he hurt a shell. So, walking and tackling and getting around safely is just not working for him. He's a Terrapin who's injured, and we saw him get replaced by Rudy Ford. I want to say last week, in the past couple of weeks.
That's exactly right.
Here's the thing: Savage came out of he was, I think, a first or second round pick a few years ago. Strong safety. He was getting you those tackle numbers in the box numbers, but over the course of his career, he's been pushed out further back. Just really has lost a lot of his IDP relevance, especially with Adrian Amos coming over from Chicago a few years ago. So this is a player who's just not available for you. I don't know if you're missing out too much on not having Darnell Savage on your roster though.
The impact, as Jorge said, is really positive for Adrian Amos in that Amos is now seeing a heavier box snap workload. Last week we saw him play nearly over 50% in the box for, I don't know if it's the first time all year, but it's one of the first times all year, which is huge. If you're an Adrian Amos manager, you can bump him up his floor, at least, if you ask me, by a little bit. And Jorge, Maryland and Illinois play basketball tomorrow night. I know this isn't a basketball show, but just be ready for the shit talk that's going to ensue. Josh, after you.
We're 7-0, baby. Wait, no, one of the two. We're undefeated so far, so bring it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, staying in the secondary news, Eddie Jackson from the Bears, I believe they've already put him on IR, so he is done for the season. Yeah. And from what I can remember, because, again, I definitely do not pay near much attention to IDP as you guys do, that Bears secondary has been starting to fall apart of late, and they gave up a lot of touchdowns to the Jets just last week, and they get maybe Aaron Rodgers, if not Jordan Love, and the hottest wide receiver in the NFL right now, not named Devontae Adams, Christian Watson, this week. So what can we expect from this Bears secondary without Eddie Jackson?
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson, but this is for real. For those people who...
Good. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Great segue considering the name of this show, Jorge. I'm proud of you, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you. This is not good. You probably know more about who filled in for Eddie last week as soon as he went out to Eddie. Like I had a first name relationship with him.
You and Eddie, yeah.
Eddie and I, yeah.
DeAndre did. Houston Carson. It's, it sucks. It's good for DeAndre Houston Carson. He'll get plenty of snaps. Their offense is bad enough that he should stay. He should be on the field quite a bit, assuming, Fields isn't to 100%. Obviously, this isn't an offense show, so we'll stick to the IDP portion of it. But Jaquan Brisker is another, point of focus. If Brisker, I think it was concussion, if I'm not mistaken, that cost him.
Correct.
He hasn't practiced yet this week. That just means Houston Carson's going to play more, most likely in the box, because I think it was Elijah Hicks that came in that would probably play deep. He's not a stellar splash play, but in a league like maybe the IDP guys invitational that you start 3 safeties, you start digging to the bottom of that barrel. You're scraping the bottom, and he might actually just stick as a good play this week. All
right, I'm going to run through some of these quickly. You have Chad Muma takes over the role from Devin Lloyd. I'm assuming this would be linebacker Devin Lloyd from Jaguars.
Yep.
Yes, I'm remembering players like this. Okay. Antoine Winfield and Mike Edwards both missed practice. Buccaneers, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Keanu Neal.
All right, 2 for 2. Let's go for 3. Kenny Moore to miss at least 1 week. That would be the slot corner for the Indianapolis Colts. And of course, I know this big name. Aaron Donald is set to miss his first career game this week. The Rams' run defense is likely to take a huge hit after this. But I real quick, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Who fills in now a defensive tackle for the Rams because they're apparently tanking with no first-round draft pick?
Insert name.
Yeah, I have honestly. I mean,
no one fantasy relevant.
Yeah, I'll pretend and go to their page and be like, "Oh, technically, what it appears to be is that what you know who gets hurt the most is a person who was on the uptick in Leonard Floyd, who since week 8 is second in the NFL in pressures, or sorry, 5th in the NFL in pressures, 2nd in sacks. So there was a positive momentum, and that momentum just hit the wall because he's the only name that people are going to even have to pay attention to. Because it's not going to be, I mean, potentially Greg Gaines. See how I did that there? Finally got I segued and stalled long enough to get to it. But Gaines did play 88% of the snaps last week. Defensive tackle leagues, maybe that's somebody to pay attention to. There you go, Josh. How's that for you?
The too long didn't read version. Avoid your Los Angeles Rams defensive players for at least a week. Probably for the rest of the season, in all honesty. Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons from the Titans, yet to practice this week. Obviously, that's big for their running game against the team, the Eagles, who run the football a lot.
Yes, that is
a lot. You mentioned Jaquan Brisker earlier, has not practiced yet this week. And star corner for the Cowboys, Trayvon Diggs, dealing with an illness that apparently is spreading through Dallas.
Yeah, Michael Gallup.
I mean, they play the Colts this week, so even their second team could beat that offense. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right, so let's get to the meat of this show. Beyond the field, these are the exploitable matchups heading into Week 13. Let's start with the defensive lineman, edge positions. Jorge, let's start with your pick here. Who do you got? Who do you like this week?
So this is a guy who will definitely not be retained by the New Orleans Saints after this season. They're definitely going to let him go. Has been super inconsistent.
That's sad considering they gave an extra first-round pick to trade up to get this guy.
That is correct, yes. Great memory. I'm talking about Marcus Davenport. He does have a great matchup this week, though, against Donovan Smith of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who since week 10 has allowed 5 total pressures and 2 sacks. What you've seen from Davenport in that time span has been very limited usage just because there's injury and working back from injury. When he's been on the field in a limited capacity, which, by the way, he pulled in a limited practice yesterday, don't know about today, in a limited fashion since week 10, he's boasted a 23.7% win rate versus offensive linemen in true passing situations. So what does that mean? He's really good at rushing the passer in situations where he's facing a quarterback in an offense where the quarterback doesn't move around too much and is kind of stationary. And last time I checked, that kind of fits Tom Brady's MO to the T. So Marcus Davenport definitely has a good matchup this week. Again, not somebody you want to invest in Dynasty, which sucks, or somebody for redraft every week. This is seriously just like a one-off good matchup. But he's definitely usable this week. Startable.
All right. So Joe, because he's not here, said, "Fuck my picks." He went the whole Rams GM thing. Fuck these picks. I'm out. So I'm gonna skip right over to Nate here. Give us your edge pick that you like this week.
Yeah, filling in for Aaron Donald. Greg Gaines is an excellent. I'm just kidding. It's not Greg Gaines.
Okie doke.
Just kidding. It's never Greg Gaines. It's Frank Clark, and I don't like that either. Our build up to these players is not exactly
not great. Yeah.
Jorge says he sucks. He's going to be released, and Frank Clark shouldn't have been.
Here's what
re-signed.
I do know: if Joe was here right now, he'd be like, "Frank Clark, are you fucking serious? This guy is like, oh, he'd be ripping Frank Clark apart."
And he was terrible. I mean, for the most part, I didn't want him re-signed, but facts are facts. Cincinnati KC should be an absolute shootout. There's no doubt about that. And since Frank Clark has returned from whatever was going on, I know that it was, you can allude and say, oh, it was a suspension, but there was off the field issues. Court dates, I think, are behind him. I think there's a number of things that, again, these guys are human. And in the humanity side of it, when you don't have the pressure of the outside game impacting you, maybe you can get back to what you do the best, which is focus on football. And he has a 24% pressure rate since returning. He's got Chris Jones next to him. Anytime you have Chris Jones next to you, you probably can benefit because no one really cares about you, Frank Clark. No offense, but Chris Jones is who they're going to focus on. Look at the Bengals. Bengals have allowed what, 5th most sacks in the NFL, 8th most points to the opposing defensive end. So everything lines up similar to Marcus Davenport in that it's a potential Frank Clark week. He is boom or bust. I don't see another big tackle week out of him, but I think that they're going to be relying upon the pass. I think both teams are going to be pass heavy.
I like Nate going 1 second, very heartfelt, like he's going through some stuff. Everybody goes through some stuff, but once they get over that stuff, they're okay. Nobody cares about him. He's just.
Oh yeah, nobody does. Yeah, I'm just it's humanity side of me. That's my empathy. I can't really say empathy. I don't really know what it's like to go through that, but sympathy.
There you go. People get that word, those two words confused all the time, and it drives me crazy. So thank you very much.
So there you go.
I know that's why I'm thanking you.
There you go. All right, let's skip over to the linebackers now. And Jorge, you're like deleting stuff on the show sheet, or no, adding stuff. You're cheating here. You got 2 picks. What is this? How you going rogue here? I know you're like half the ownership of this show, but come on, man. Like we didn't sign up for this shit.
I just started filling in the show sheet, and then I'm like, ooh, I got another one I didn't even think about. And Nate would probably.
That's all right. We'll call this one what would have been Joe's pick. How about that?
Yeah, that works. Okay, so this week it's Quay Walker, linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Since week 10, Quay has been a top 5 linebacker at FantasyPros points per game with a 15.4 point average. Devondre Campbell, who, had he been playing, would have been seeing a lot more of the production than Quay Walker, but he hasn't been. He's missed the past few weeks. He got in a limited practice yesterday. But with the Packers having a week 14 bye, there's a lot of talk that, let's just shut him down for 2 weeks. Let's give him time to rest, which is great for Quay Walker. Chicago allows the 11th most points to the inside linebacker position. Here's the thing about Quay Walker, though, just to get people on board here. He's not a great solo to assist tackler. So for those who are kind of not novices or just need a little reminder, solo tackles count for more points than assisted tackles. So that's something that you get compensated by when you get a lot of tackle volume. So that the Bears actually are one of the top teams in the NFL in terms of like rushing yards for the season. So obviously with Justin Fields just tearing up everything. So he should get that volume this week is where I'm going with that. So definitely fire up Quay Walker as a linebacker. Somebody else that I was actually kind of surprised to see when I was digging in more about the run stopping potential for these linebackers is Jermaine Pratt of the Kansas City Chiefs. I didn't realize Jermaine Pratt played predominantly at middle linebacker. That's something I just never paid attention to. I always thought he was like a weak side or a strong side, but this year he's been predominantly at middle. He's the 5th graded linebacker overall in run stopping percentage since week 10, according to PFF. Since week 10, he's averaged 11.5 points per game, which makes him a good linebacker 3 flex option here. And let's face it, the Kansas City Chiefs are allowing the 12th most fantasy points to opposing middle linebackers on the season. And the Chiefs, Nate, as you know, they got this guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, Isaiah Pacheco, who they're getting more and more volume to the past 3 weeks, 15 attempts, 16 attempts, last week, 22 attempts. So it is looking like the Chiefs are trying to establish a run more, which is great for a middle linebacker who's really good at tackling running backs. So definitely, some people might say, well, Quay Walker is an obvious play. Okay, well, then he's an obvious play. I hope you're playing him. Somebody who may not be an obvious play is Jermaine Pratt.
Yeah, he could be a sneaky play for sure. I think the fact that you look at like the last few weeks, especially, at least last week we'll dig into, is that despite really that 70% snap share that he had, the majority being first and second down doesn't hurt him to not be on the field for third down and maybe occasional fourth down as much, because the Chiefs aren't that heavy third down. They tend to get chunk plays on first and second down for the majority of the time. Since this could be a whole, I don't know, this seems like such a revenge game. Who knows what's going to happen, because last year they're pissed off. Chris Jones is saying that Carlos Dunlap is hated by Cincinnati teams. It's tongue in cheek. It was a joke, but you can't put anything on social media. He's like, yeah, I told them they hate you, man. You left to come here, and he was saying it all in joke. And man, Twitter went crazy. Like, we hate him. We never wanted him to quit on us.
Twitter goes crazy when you say, no hot sauce on wings. Like, I mean, they make excuses to get mad at shit. Exactly.
Yes, you are very correct. Which why we do it to ourselves with Twitter is beyond me, but it's how we all get together. So I'm gonna say thank you, Twitter.
There you go. All right, Nate. Let's close this out with your linebacker pick, and then we'll pick on some DBs without the DB whisperer in tow.
I don't have two picks. I'm only gonna take one here, Jorge.
That's because you follow the rules, Nate.
I am a rule follower. I like toes and nose, follow my steps, do what I want. If you had given me a direction to say, hey, pick a person that in week 2 you never would guess you'd be saying his name in week 13, well, then I follow directions really well, because Jalen Smith, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but my God, everything lines up exactly like it should for when you break down. Take the name away. I say this every week. Take a name away, look at statistics, look at situations, look at opportunities, and then fill in the person who just happens to be that guy. And it's Jalen Smith. The Giants have given him, snap shares of 64% to 86% to last week, 90%. Take Crowder, it's done. Thank God. It's one thing they've done right, at least when it comes to that. Jalen Smith, Jorge,
Oh yeah,
excellent elbow drop. Very humorous.
People's elbow drop. Yes.
I don't know if I want to call it the people's elbow drop, but I'm gonna give it to. I don't think the people like Jalen Smith that much, so he's kind of it's an elbow drop. But regardless, here's the fact of the matter: against the Commanders, who are the third most generous teams to opposing linebackers, it also goes a step further. Jalen Smith is, I'm going to say, statistically speaking, a decent run stopping linebacker. Commanders, or as you'll know, the last 3 weeks, I guess I haven't paid that close attention to notice this trend change. They're running the ball nearly 60% over the last 3 weeks now.
I do not know that.
58 to 42% run to pass ratio. And Jalen Smith, who led the team in run play tackles last week, with that snap share, if he gets 90+% again, I see an opportunity for him to have double-digit tackles. And for where he's at, an LB2 upside play, I hate to say it, but I'm all in on it.
I heard Jalen Smith's name a lot on Thanksgiving against Dallas. And I know Dallas is obviously going to run the ball a lot. And you brought up the stats that Commanders are running. Brian Robinson's getting the rock. And Jorge, you being a Commanders fan, I know you know this. Like, he had himself a damn good game last week. Antonio Gibson is coming into this game questionable. So I think you're going to see Brian Robinson being used a lot in the passing game as well. And, Jalen Smith is somebody that's always been rangy. Definitely doesn't have the speed that he had when he first came into the league. That's why he's bounced around the last year or so. But, as a novice IDP player, I'm interested in this take because, again, like, that's what you want at the linebacker position. You want tackles. And if a guy's going to be involved, he's going to be involved.
Yeah.
All right. So let's close this out, this section out where we'll hit the DBs. And Nate, I'll stick with you on this one. Talk to us about Kevin Byard.
Yeah, it's taken 13 weeks for his name to finally pop back into the upside play versus the avoid situation. And a lot of that's positioning. A lot of that's, I'm going to say a lot of that's, I just can't put my finger on it. There's certain times that a player in IDP can have an opportunity situation and just not have the outcome. I mean, you can't control that. If you're making a play on the ball and the guy in front of you makes a tackle, you get nothing for that. But it is what it is. I have to focus on if Jeffrey Simmons and Danique Autry are both out. If they are, that pass rush is non-existent. Sustained drives for the Eagles. Plenty of middle, intermediate to deep opportunities for Philly. We know the run game is gonna be there, and so without that, it just seems like it's getting to the second level. Kevin Byard hasn't exactly been the best run stopping safety, but a lot of that is a result of the fact that Amani Hooker's been out, and with Amani Hooker out, Kevin Byard was playing deep a lot more, and now with his return, I'm seeing a heavier percentage of snaps near the line of scrimmage. The Eagles allow the second most fantasy points to the safety position. All these things are kind of adding up to an opportunity where Kevin Byard can make a play. And what we've seen over the years is that he actually is a splash play safety waiting to happen. He hasn't shown that yet, but the opportunities there, the playmaker is still in him. It just hasn't been released yet. And I don't know if it's going to happen against the Eagles. They might be smart with the ball and just realize they can win, keeping the ball on the ground like they can. But if that's the case, if he's near the line of scrimmage, there's an upside for tackles as well, because it's pretty much David Long and then nothing else at the linebacker position. I'm not overly enamored with that defense anymore, but it is.
That defense has always been bend, don't break. They do
That's
the bare
exactly right.
minimum to get by.
Yep.
Like I've said this about the Titans for probably the last 3 years. They are a bad, good team. They don't really do, outside of running the football, they really don't do anything exceptionally well.
Mm-hmm.
And they just fell into Derrick Henry.
And
like
that's
they just use him, and that's it. Because Tannehill is a mediocre game manager at best.
Yeah.
And when he has to win you a game with his arm, he's not going to do it.
Right. And they're you know what they are? They're a very well-coached team that has the proper pieces for a smash mouth, bend, don't break type defense. Yeah. When you have to
problem is smash mouth doesn't win football games anymore. Let me rephrase that. It doesn't win NFL championships anymore. Let me go that way.
It'll get you to the AFC divisional round, and surprisingly,
maybe the championship game in a good year.
Maybe, but hell, they were the number 1 seed last year, weren't they?
They were.
Yeah, and I mean that's just crazy.
Immediate bounce.
Exactly. I mean, which we all kind of knew was happening.
Yep.
But no one really wanted to play him. No one went in and said, "Yeah, we get Tennessee," because on the right day when the line's blocking well and Derrick Henry stiff arming people back to Nashville or wherever they're from, because they were home team. So of course, insert team name. But I just don't trust any given week. And the Eagles are so tough. So I see a lot of opportunity for Kevin Byard. This is me. See, Jorge, what you do is you kiss the butt of the host, and they let you in. Actually, this has turned into an Eagles house, not by me per se, but here's a quick little story. And remember, Jorge, I was talking about when the young men that my daughter's boyfriends are friends with, they're all Eagles fans.
That you mentor. Yes.
I
kind of mentored them. I didn't know that. We were at a wedding. They were talking about IDP. They gathered around the table. We were waxing poetic about that. And we were just talking about fantasy football. And they decided to fill me up with some drinks and shots. And now they know that I have all the games. So they come over here. Big Eagles fans, great football fans too. Love it. And I'm watching the game, the Javon Hargrave game, I'll call it, which is 4 weeks ago. And I had Javon Hargrave. They came down and were listening to this podcast that we're talking right now on the Thursday night Eagles game. And they heard me mention Javon Hargrave about 7 times. Game started, and they're like, "Why do you like Javon Hargrave that much?" And I go, "I love Javon Hargrave. Watch, he's going to have a sack, if not 2 this game." And he blew up, and they are going crazy. They're high-fiving me. I mean, we're just all going electric, and they go, "God, only if we could play in a football fantasy league with defensive players." Josh.
Ask and ye shall receive, my friends.
I kind of felt terrible. I was like, "Hey, you jack-offs." That's what I do. I was having whoa. We just only
In fairness, they just met you, Nate.
They feel like family like you, Josh. So, needless to say, they have been over now probably 3 of the 4 of the 5 weekends. Eagles gear in tow. I have a Philadelphia Eagles football right over there where I'm pointing, signed, not real signed, facsimile or whatever. But yeah, I got more. I have the second most team I have stuff in the house of are the Philadelphia Eagles right now. There you go. Jorge, follow that up. What you got?
Go Commanders. Even though everything publicly is complete utter garbage, I should not really be a fan, nor should anybody of this team. But
I'm still embarrassed for you guys about this whole Sean Taylor,
the mannequin.
Oh my god! I worked retail for 17 years, specifically in sports retail. I've dressed better mannequins than that. Like that they should absolutely be embarrassed. And me being a Miami Hurricanes fan, I adore Sean Taylor. Oh, yeah. Like that guy was set to be a god amongst NFL safety lore. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately taken way too soon. And their attempt at public relations, like, light shining on them, failed miserably. Absolute miserable. Oh my God.
They even said before the presentation that Dan Snyder is not going to be at the unveiling of the statue. And I'm like, yep, now I understand why you weren't there, as if you didn't need more reason for people to rip you.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of safeties, you've picked a really good one. I want to hear your opinions here because we have a question from Czar in the comments, and it pertains to offense. But I think when you talk up this gentleman, it might be able to give him an answer to his question. So, Jorge, take it away, brother.
Sure. So Kyle Duggar is a safety who on the last season was him and Matt Judon were like the Patriot IDP players you wanted to have locked into your lineup each and every week. This year, Kyle Duggar has been battling some injuries. You've seen some competition for snaps with Adrian Phillips during that time, during his comeback. That has all but ceased recently. In the past month, he's been the safety 3 overall in run stopping percentage and penalty points per game, 10.5. He's a top 25 defensive back. What's really good to see, though, in those games where you saw Adrian Phillips kind of still, insert his way into the lineup onto the field, you saw Kyle Duggar playing a little bit more back in the free safety. That is not the case anymore. That since week 9, he's played 67 of his snaps in the box, closer to the line of scrimmage, helping in run support versus 11 in coverage. And so that is great when you're taking on a Buffalo Bills team that has a quarterback that loves to run the ball, that has a running back in Devin Singletary that they're starting to emphasize more in the running game. This is great for Kyle Duggar this week, Thursday Night Football. I put out a tweet about it, quote tweeting the show, just because I wanted people to get their eyes on this name before kickoff in case they didn't get a chance to see or listen. But yeah, I'm all on board Kyle Duggar this week and going forward.
Love it. All right. So speaking of Kyle Duggar, Duggar covers the safety more often, or not the safety, excuse me, covers the tight ends more often than not. Our buddy Czar is trying to decide between Dawson Knox, who Buffalo plays New England and could very well see a lot of Kyle Duggar, or Foster Moreau going against the Chargers and Derwin James. So, Jorge, who would you take in this matchup? Who we liking? If you like Duggar, are you fading Knox as a result?
No, not necessarily. I mean, just because Duggar's great at tackling and great at getting you the hits doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily stop Knox from getting those receptions. He's just going to get hit when he gets those receptions. I think for a question like this, the real question you have to ask yourself is, which quarterback do you trust throwing the ball to a tight end? Derek Carr to Moreau or Josh Allen to Dawson Knox? I still think Duggar is going to get his work mostly while he does help with the safety. I think run support is kind of turning into a need here for Buffalo. So I think you're going to see him get plenty of tackle upside, and I'd still fire up Dawson Knox.
Nate?
Yeah, the only other thing I would pay attention to, and the problem is you don't have time to pay attention to this, is Derwin James not being at practice today. And that's Derwin James's MO, is just not being at practice. I get that. He's always been.
To be fair, for the longest time, not being in games was his MO too. He missed a lot of games.
That's true too. You know what? I take that back. I just got that he did practice today, so I'm right there with you. I'm going to take Knox as well, personally. So yeah, forget everything I just said. That was pointless. Sorry, Czar.
Well, there's your answer, Czar. All right, so let's go to the lowered expectations segment of this show. These would be the players that were not necessarily as high on based on consensus IDP rankings that you'd likely find over on Fantasy Pros. Guys that probably are going to essentially just bottom out, not do near as well as you hope they would do. So, Nate, I'll start with you. You have one of the Baltimore linebackers that you're not liking so much this week.
I do. I probably have many consensus, at least mine. Linebacker 1 in pre-draft rankings or preseason draft rankings. Roquan Smith is a stud. I'm not discrediting his ability. What I've seen, though, is since he joined Baltimore, I don't know what it is. Something's off. Something's not consistent with what the Roquan Smith that we know. I mean, if we look back at the last four games, he's had 8 tackles or less. And I realize that people are going to go, well, 8 tackles isn't bad. That's not what you want out of Roquan Smith. 8 tackles out of Jalen Smith. Yeah, I'm fine with that. There we go. Now we're talking. But Roquan has a little higher expectations. And to impact that point or drive that home, looking back at Roquan Smith's history in the NFL, we have to go back to the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. When's the last time he had 4 games consecutively where he didn't have 8 tackles? He was banged up at the end of 19, not rookie seed, but second year in 2020. And then you have to fast forward to 2020 of weeks 15 through 17 is the only time he's had 3 games where he's had 8 tackles or less. What I'm getting to is the sample size is pretty much non-existent for him to have this type of output. Some people will say, oh, well, then he's due. Well, no, I can't forecast that he's just due because something seems. What's crazy is Patrick Queen has been the beneficiary. Patrick Queen has been actually better as a result of Roquan. So our teams, going away from Roquan, is that the case in Baltimore? I don't believe that's the situation. I'll tell you right now, I have him ranked at LB 18, whereas I think Fantasy Pros has him probably LB 2 or 3. And look at the team he's playing. Roxanne's not here, so I can talk all the trash I want. Denver's garbage. And I don't see Denver being able to, sustain many drives. And if you're looking at a team that, you want that 8 tackles or more, yeah, you do need a little bit of volume. And I don't see that happening against Denver. It's just one of those things. You're going to play Roquan, Josh. There's nothing you can do. If you have Roquan Smith, you're playing him. I know that. But temper expectations.
I was about to say, you want to bet? Because I don't have a Roquan in any of my IDP leagues. So
then I stand corrected. Looks like because of that, Josh will not play Roquan Smith.
I do have Patrick Queen in the IDP guys invitational, and I have been sitting him most weeks just because I honestly just have more consistent linebacker play in front of him. So
stick with that. I don't care what Queen's been doing as of late. I don't buy in.
Well, I want to thank you guys for the Zaire Franklin call because that's really who I've been playing over Queen, and he's been working out pretty well for me.
Yeah, he's been working out great.
Yeah. All right. Jorge, you're going away from the linebacker position. What defensive end are you lowering expectations on this week?
So Fantasy Pros has him consensus ranking as the DL4. I'm not so sold on that. I'm talking about DeMarcus Lawrence of the Dallas Cowboys, who's primarily all season long has played defensive right end, defensive left end, excuse me. And this is not good because Braden Smith should be the offensive lineman he's lining up against. And Braden Smith has been playing lights out this entire season. The past 3 weeks hasn't allowed any pressures or sacks. And I want to draw a point of emphasis to why I'm talking about the past 3 weeks. I don't know if you heard 3 weeks ago, but the Colts got a brand new head coach who used to be an offensive lineman. And that's paid dividends for the Colts offensive line as a whole. You look at weeks 7 through 9, and you look at the offensive lineman grades on Pro Football Focus, not great. Not great. What's been the liability there, Nate, as you are well aware? Matt Pryor, tackle, had just played god-awful. Since week 9, they replaced him with Bernard Raymond. And you look at weeks 10 through 12 now, which corresponds to the benching of Matt Pryor, the putting in of Raymond, as well as having this change at head coach. The Colts offensive line now is playing like one of the best offensive lines in all of football, playing like how they played last year. And what are we seeing? We're seeing better protection for Matt Ryan. We're seeing more use of Jonathan Taylor in the running game. All of that is translating, I believe, into DeMarcus Lawrence just not having a good week. Now, one of the ways that a pass rusher can get, around a bad blocking assignment is to be moving all around, being placed at different positions along with the defensive line to try to chip away at, where's the weak link? Where's the weak link? Let me go get it. That's not what Lawrence does. That's what Micah Parsons does. Parsons is the one who moves all around the defensive line to try and exploit those matchups. That's not going to be DeMarcus Lawrence this week. So I'm fading him. I think he's definitely going to not provide DL4 production for you.
Yeah. Speaking as a novice IDP player, I haven't really seen much DeMarcus Lawrence at the top of DL rankings. Maybe I'm crazy, but DL4 feels excessive. Like
Well,
players are ranked that high because they're consistently producing, right?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Week 3.
Let's be honest. Parsons gets all the love anyway. So
in 10,
Yeah.
week 3 and 10 has only been a top. Yeah,
that's
10.
it. Exactly, and that was a 3 set. I mean, that was week 3 was crazy. That'll catapult you up enough where that's all people can remember: 6 tackle, 3 sack output, and then, like you said, week 10. And what's the outlier here? Are the tackle numbers? 7 tackles in week 10, 8 tackles in week 6, and 6 tackles in week 3. He didn't have the sack in week 6 against your Eagles, Josh. But
damn right he didn't.
Damn right he didn't. And the offensive line was like, Which, by the way, last week,
Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, get the fuck out of here.
So Lane Johnson last week on the game against the Packers, I think it was the interception that they threw. He was running down to make a tackle. And I can't remember the play. I would have to bring it up. We'll talk off air because this is probably nauseating for people trying to listen to me just, throw up through my explanation of when Lane Johnson. But ultimately what he did is Lane Johnson ran about 10 yards to try to make a tackle and basically stumbled into the back of his own other offensive lineman. And I had to say that's the one thing I haven't seen Lane Johnson do gracefully the entire season. Finally, he made an error. And he screwed up a little bit. I had laughed at the other Eagles fans as a result.
Well, that's okay. He still hasn't allowed a sack since 2020.
Correct. So exactly. That's it. That's what I'm saying. Everybody needs a little humbling moment every now and then. He's too good.
Oh, man. I love it. Love my Eagles. Can't wait. Sunday's going to be fun against Tennessee. Yeah, all right, boys.
Great game.
That ought to do it. Little quick this week with Joe not here to talk everybody's ear off. You guys have any parting words? Parting words before I get into our fun little outro and shout out all the sites and all you guys. Jorge.
I think as we're again 2 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs, maybe a lot of you are kind of teetering on that 6-5, 5-6 portion of your league. It's don't get cute, but don't be oblivious to trends. So basically, I'm giving you more confusing information that I probably could have done. Given you, just not kept my mouth open. But no,
I have to mute you and then move on to Nate because
yes, pretty much. That's pretty much what you should be doing. To answer your question, no, I have nothing else to add. This should be a great week for fantasy. Great week for fantasy football for IDP. Just follow our advice. You're not going to go wrong this week.
Yes, sir. Any parting words, Nate?
After that soliloquy, what can I say that possibly could match that? I'll just go.
Be Shakespeare compared to what I just did. Right there.
Exactly. Jibbity jibbity babbity babbity, I believe is what
Bibbity bobbity boo. Exactly.
No, I
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. This has been the latest episode of You Down with IDP, a co-production between my site, Club Fantasy, and their site, Fantasy in Frames. Make sure you're following Fantasy in Frames on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Fantasy in Frames, and be sure to check out their website, fantasyinframes.com, for all of those IDP needs. And don't forget, they do Dynasty and Redraft and DFS too, and they got a whole bunch of shows that they do on Wednesday nights. You can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. We have articles on DFS, player props, sports betting. Our Start Sit column, Confidence Plays, will not be out this week, unfortunately. Big Travi is dealing with COVID. Get well soon, buddy. But all the articles will start dropping as early as Friday. You can also check out Ryan's Stream of the Week article, which dropped early Thursday. For Nate, at Nate Marcum on Twitter. For Jorge, at Jorge B. Edwards. You can find me at the One Hudsonian, but quite honestly, just follow Club Fantasy and follow those guys. They're going to be the ones that help you out with IDP. Be sure to follow Joe, unfortunately, who's not here, at Joe_Zollo. And, of course, Queen Roxanne at F Queen Roxanne on Twitter. Always remember, offense may win you fantasy, but defense wins fantasy championships. Hopefully the whole gang will be back next week. If not, tune in for these two next week. Peace out, y'all.